Calvin Castine at the Clinton County Historical Association for Chapter 4. And we'll have a brief little visit here with Jan Kuchar. And what are you going to tell us about, Jan?
I'm going to tell you about the pot.
The pot.
The pot is the first thing you'll see when you open the door to the museum and come in.
Right there's the door, and you come in, and straight ahead of you is this thing.
Is the pot. The pot is a Haudenosaunee. It's an Iroquois vessel. It is unique because it has a six-pointed design. You can see where some of the points. And we think
it's a sextagon cover.
That we've been told that it symbolizes the directions of the Haudenosaunee universe.
Well, there were 6 nations at one time.
Or it was six nations, but it points to the sky. So it's north, south, east, west, the earth, and sky. There's a chevron design along the rim, and that depicts the mountains and the fields. And the design in it, there is, like, you can see where some things were impressed, and that would have been corn against the pot. And it was created between 13 and 1600 CE. Now, CE stands for current era. It's what we used to call AD, but then they took the AD away because it was religious, and they've changed the calendar so many times.
Yeah. So we can't say after Christ anymore.
No, that's all done. And then the BE is before, I think it's BCE, before Common Era.
Before the Common Era.
Yeah, so that's our pot.
Okay. So this was before Samuel D. Champlain came here in 1609.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the paint, this work here, this really tells us a lot about the Haudenosaunee and where they settled and their beliefs, and the nice thing is it's also in French.
Oh, oui. So this is before Clinton County was here, you know,
way before.
1300.
Yep, way before. Way before, and the idea that, I mean, just seeing it, so much of it intact.
So where did it come from?
It was given to us by Gary Allen.
Okay, alrighty. Now here's something I think I have seen before, and Jan is still with me here. You're on the wrong side of me here, Jan, so I'll go over to your wrong side.
No, I want to start from Valcor.
You want to start at Valcor, okay.
Okay.
All right, we're at Valcor?
We're at Valcor.
Okay.
Okay, this is a diorama created by Arto Monaco for the bicentennial, 1776. And it portrays the Battle of Valcor. Many people call the Battle of Saratoga the turning point of the Revolutionary War. And you've all heard of that in your history books. However, there would never have been a Battle of Saratoga if there had not been the Battle of Valcor. Valcor Island was Lake Champlain. Benedict Arnold, whom everyone knows as in a different way. Benedict Arnold was the hero of the Battle of Valcor.
Very much on our side at this point.
He was 100% on our side.
And for all you Arto Monaco fans, we will be ending up this segment with Arto Monaco, so don't
worry.
Don't worry.
Turn off.
We will get into Arto Monaco very shortly.
The Battle of Valcor was October 11th, 1776, and we had the British and the Americans. British, let me start with Benedict Arnold, because I like Benedict Arnold. I like to tell his story because it's a story that isn't usually told. He grew up in a wealthy family. His father was a pharmacist. His father lost the fortune. Benedict Arnold, on his own, married, had 2 children, and he became a sailor and a merchant. He was very familiar with the sea, and he was from Connecticut. When the war started, he signed up instantly, and George Washington trusted him immensely and the goal was to see if we could get the French Canadians to be on our side. He marched his men up through Maine, through Canada, in some horrific conditions. They were near starving, and Benedict Arnold, he was a person who led from the front. If his men were eating shoe leather, he ate shoe leather. They came down through Quebec City, had a battle, came down through Montreal, had a battle. Benedict Arnold was severely injured in his leg during one of those battles. The plan for the British plan was to come down Lake Champlain. Now, I say down Lake Champlain, it's really up Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain flows north, so they really were heading south. Does that confuse you? So the British plan was to come down through Lake Champlain, go down to Fort Ticonderoga, cross at Ticonderoga. There is a small carry there of like 7 miles, and they would have been able to take their ships over that carry. Then they would have gone down Lake George, and they would have also made another small carry over to the Hudson River, and that would have cut the, I always call them the rabble-rousing Yankees, totally separating the hotbed of the Revolution from the rest of the country. And the war would have been over. However, they did not count on Benedict Arnold being at Valcour. Benedict Arnold built his navy at what is now called Whitehall. It was called Scainsborough at the time. He built his navy there. He brought his soldiers up here. Most of those soldiers had never seen battle, and they had never been on a ship. They were farmers. They knew pitchforks. They did not know oars. They came up here. He anchored his men, knowing that the British were going to be coming down. And this is where I need to point. So the British came down on the eastern side of Valcour Island in pursuit of Benedict Arnold. They get down past Valcour and like, oh, darn, there they are. So then they had to come back around and they engaged in the battle.
Because Arnold was hiding in that area there.
In this area.
So they couldn't see him coming from the north. So they went to the eastern side because there was more navigable waters there rather than come through on this side where they would have found him and squashed him in that little area.
Squashed him in the little area. And they tried, and they put up a valiant fight. Then darkness came. Now, Benedict Arnold, using his brains, said, okay, we're going to get out of here, and we're going to get out of here as quietly as we can. They muffled their oars with blankets, and by the light of the burning Royal Savage, they slipped past the British. The British figured, well, we've got them, they're done. No sense in hanging around. So they spent the night under fog. It was foggy. You know how it is around here at that time of the year, October. And they headed, and Benedict Arnold and his men sailed south.
Okay, and the Burning Royal Savage, that was the name of one of the ships.
Right. That was his ship with all of his records. He goes down Lake Champlain. Then the British get up in the morning, and they're ready to finish him off. Oh, no, they're gone. Now what do we have to do? So now they're going to chase them. So they chase them down the river, down the Lake Champlain. Benedict Arnold eventually gets off at Arnold's Bay in Vermont and makes his way to Crown Point. He destroys the rest of what is left at Crown Point Fort, and then he goes down to Ticonderoga. The British, meanwhile, follow him, and then they realize, hey, we can't stay here. We have a huge force. There's no way on earth we can stay in the Champlain Valley. Winter is coming. We don't have provisions. So they hightail it back up to Montreal.
Yeah, so this again, October 14th was when the battle took place.
And then, so then they get all done. Benedict Arnold is at Fort Ticonderoga. At Ty, they strengthen their forces, and they are ready to take on the British at Saratoga. Now, I will finish up the rest because I do like Benedict Arnold.
Okay.
So Benedict Arnold, at Saratoga, he proved his point. He was the leader. That did not go well. So Saratoga, of course, is won. Now, the question is always, why did Benedict Arnold turn traitor? He was highly esteemed. George Washington felt he was one of his best men. In the meantime, he goes down so he reassigns him because at Saratoga he was injured again on his foot. The man is now a cripple. His leg is about 3 inches shorter than the other leg. He goes down to Pennsylvania, down to Philadelphia, and he puts him in charge of Philadelphia. He meets up with Peggy Shipman, who was a loyalist. Their family was wealthy. They had a lot of influence in Philadelphia. And Benedict Arnold, I liken Benedict Arnold personality-wise to George Patton. People loved him or they hated him. So he, along the way, had been refused promotions at places where Arnold felt he should have been promoted. But he had a couple of people on the Continental Congress who were not in his favor. He had alienated some, and they decided they were going to get him. He built the U.S. Navy by his own money, by his own hand, and it gets all done, and he submitted his bills to the Continental Congress, and they paid him. The ones who were not on his side said, oh, no, we need receipts. And Benedict Arnold says they're at the bottom of Lake Champlain. They said, too bad, you need to repay us. He, out of his own money, paid back the Continental Congress. So he basically paid for it twice. And then the question comes, they always say, oh yes, Peggy Shipman is the one who changed his mind about the side that he should be on. And modern scholars, in reading a lot of his work, have noticed that he believed that the war was basically not going the way that he felt it was supposed to be. People were coming out as leaders. He was looking, I think, more at a utopian idea. He wanted everyone to be equal in the quote-unquote reigning of a country. He wanted everyone to have an equal voice. And we all know that's an idealist idea. You really can't totally do that. And he was very discouraged with what was happening. That's one reason why he may have turned. The fact that he was never recognized for any of his work may have been another reason why he turned. George Washington put him at West Point. By the time he put him at West Point, most of the war had switched and was now south. So that West Point wasn't really an ideal place for him to be. And so the other thing was, this is a man who, they always blamed the woman, of course.
Yeah.
So he said, he's a strong leader. Is a strong leader going to really listen to a woman that much? I don't know. We have seen things change. But eventually he did turn. The story of West Point is famous. But if there had never been, even though he lost the battle at Valcour, he basically saved the country because it would have been split and
delayed what?
And it would have delayed Saratoga, and then after Saratoga, that's when the French joined.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Battle of Valcour in 1776.
1776.
Right off the shores of, that's right about where Peru and Plattsburgh meet, and the shore side, right?
Shore side, yep. And then the other part of the diorama that Arto Monaco did recognizes the Battle of Plattsburgh. Now, the Battle of Plattsburgh is interesting because we call it the Battle of Plattsburgh, but there was really two battles. There was the Battle of Plattsburgh, which was on land, and the Battle of Lake Champlain, which of course was on the water.
So it's often referred to other places as the Battle of Lake Champlain.
Yep. And the interesting thing about both battles on Lake Champlain and Battle of Plattsburgh was that in our history books in school, they are very seldom mentioned. Very seldom mentioned. They're treated as not important, but when you see the value of them, they really should be covered more. That's why we really need to rely on our local museums and our local talent, our local historians, and our local teachers to teach the value of this. The word has never quite made it out anywhere.
Fortunately, I know they celebrated the commemoration of the battle in previous years, but then in 97 and 98, the county area started getting interested
Really
again.
interested in it.
And it's been promoted.
Locally, very much.
Yes.
Very much.
And as I like to point out to people, all these British boats that came down through here followed the same path that Samuel D. Champlain followed, and that's going right by Rouse's Point, right by the shores of Rouse's Point.
All the way down.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they all seem to end at Ticonderoga. The interesting thing at Ticonderoga is you may not realize it unless you drive around Ty, but that Lake Champlain is on one side of Mount Defiance and Lake George is on the other. You can get on Lake George at Ticonderoga, and it shows the very strategic place that it plays.
Yeah.
So, Battle of Plattsburgh. This was the War of 1812 was winding down. They were getting tired of fighting. Nobody seemed to be any winning or losing, and at that point they were in Cons. Oh no, that's not where it was. Where did they do the battle? They were ready to sign the peace treaty, and the decision was whatever land you occupy when they signed the peace treaty would be your property. So if England beat someplace here, then that would be theirs, and so that was they basically just wanted to get the war done and over with. So in September 1st, the British invade. Now the story is that Macomb was here with a fairly sizable numbers of men, and he gets a quote-unquote message that the British are going to be doing a massive invasion over by Sackett's Harbor. So they send people with all the soldiers over to Sackett's Harbor.
This was in August, late August.
Yes.
Yes.
And they leave here, 3,000 people with 3,000 soldiers. They were all injured, old, discouraged. They were not the prime people.
Right.
So they leave them here. And so Macomb was in charge of the land people. At the same time, McDonough he had been on Lake Champlain. He had been assigned Lake Champlain as his stomping ground during most of the war. He was very familiar with Lake Champlain. So they realize that the British are going to be heading south. They come down Lake Champlain, and this is what the British had as another idea. They said, well, let's go down Lake Champlain. We'll get across at Ticonderoga. We'll go down Lake George, and we'll be able to claim all of this northern area, all of New England and Maine. This would be all ours. Apparently, they didn't learn from the first time.
Now, we should point out that while this was going on, the Star-Spangled Banner was being written because of another battle.
Yep, down in Washington. Yep,
Yeah, so
D.C.
This was a crucial battle here. We think of the invasion of Washington, the burning of Washington, D.C., but this here actually played a more important role. And again, as a Northern Tier person, that invasion took place in Champlain. According to Pliny Moore's journal, the first scouts showed up on August 28th, and the forces started to come across in early September. And after all this was done, the British forces stayed there across from what's now northeastern Clinton at the Dewey Tavern area, and they didn't leave Champlain until September 25th. So for 4 full weeks,
They were still
they
hanging
were
around.
here in northern Clinton County in Champlain. So everything that, as I try to tell people, the Battle of Plattsburgh started and ended in
Champlain.
The battle took place here, but it started and ended in Champlain. So go ahead, let me further interrupt.
That's interrupt because I didn't realize all that. So McDonough was very familiar with Lake Champlain. He sees the ships coming down from Montreal or from Canada. Now they Confiance or the Confiance was a ship that was actually sent. I can't believe they did this. They sent the parts to Illinois, and that's where they assembled the boats from England.
North of the border here. Illinois.
Yeah, so it's kind of like putting it together. And
Because it's just so big, they couldn't do it otherwise. Is that big?
It was that big. It was
ship?
it was the largest ship ever on Lake Champlain, and they could see them coming. They saw the sails coming down, and it was September 11th, 1814. They could see the sails coming. They knew what was going to happen, and McDonough angled his ships. He realized that the wind was in his favor. The British come down. They round Cumberland Head, and they were basically evenly matched. They were basically evenly matched with firepower. But McDonough had served in the Barbary Wars, and this was a little trick that he picked up from the Barbary Wars. He anchored his ship, which has escaped my brain.
In the name of his ship?
Yep.
But he was able to.
It's over there.
He
Anchored his ship, and the British, at this point, they're saying, okay, we've kind of got him. And then all of a sudden, he lifts his anchor and turns his ship around, and the British go, oh darn, we're sunk. They surrender.
Because they have cannon on one side and all that firepower is
Yep.
gone.
You
turn your ship around and all of a sudden
Yep.
you got brand new firepower.
brand new stuff. And it's like, oh no. So after about a two-hour battle,
Well, sinking the Confiance didn't hurt.
yeah, that happened first. The captain of the Confiance was killed right at the very beginning, so they had basically lost their leader. So on land, you have 3,000 troops against like 6,000. Prevost was on land. He was the British, and Macomb was the Americans. And Prevost had orders from the British, under no circumstances get stuck down in Plattsburgh on Lake Champlain because we can't support you. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the goods, you're going to be stuck there for the winter and it's not going to be pretty. So Prevost, seeing the surrender on the lake, he also surrenders. The thing with Prevost, though, is that he very, very easily could have won that battle on land.
But he chose to retreat.
But he retreated. And so now the interesting thing about the Battle of Plattsburgh is that it was also on September 11th, similar to our own September 11th.
Right.
And the weather was the exact same weather. The timing was the exact same timing of our September 11th.
2011. 2001.
2021, or 2001.
2001.
And so that the similarity is there. And I remember that night watching the TV, as everyone else was, and Tom Brokaw saying, well, September 11th, I don't know, what on earth has anything ever happened on September 11th? Well, you better believe that Miss little old Jan Kuchar jumped right out of her chair.
Grab that phone.
And talked to Mr. Tom Brokaw.
Let me tell you.
But the importance of the battle is that as they were working on this treaty, the treaty was being written that the northern border of the United States, if the British had won this battle, the northern border of the United States would have been the northern border of Massachusetts across the United States. And what we would have lost would have been all of the Great Lakes. We would have lost the potential of the St. Lawrence Seaway, and that would have stalled our westward expansion. However, the people who lost the most in the wars, in the War of 1812, were the Native Americans. Their property had been, their lands were decimated. So many of them were moved to reservations. They were the true losers of the battle because it was between the Americans and the British. It was basically a stalemate, except in that the Americans kind of showed their power, so to speak, and they were recognized as a genuine country after that.
And we mentioned the Native Americans. one of the names for Lake Champlain that the Native Americans gave it was Warpath of the Nations.
Yeah, it was a highway.
Yeah, this was where they got from here to Vermont. This is how they got up in north and south. This is how they got into Canada, up into the Richelieu, and
Yeah, it was basically, it was the way you went all the way down to New York City, down, and it was the highway. Okay, so let me see.
all right,
Now, a little
well,
part,
we're done with this. We'll put the lights on.
yep, we can put the lights on. I always remember which
Yeah.
one's the light switch
We'll
goes.
find out shortly here.
There we go.
The lights are on. Where are we starting here?
Okay.
Benedict Arnold, there's your
Benedict
hero.
Arnold, he's
You want
our
me
hero.
you want me to get a picture of you and Benedict together? We'll stand next to Benedict.
Hey, Ben, I got it.
There
My
we go.
buddy.
There's she, Jan and her hero.
And a lot of people get upset with me on that because they'll say, well, he was a traitor. But I liken it to a lot of other people. Robert E. Lee, he was a phenomenal general.
Yeah.
He was, but
It's on the
But he was on the wrong side of
other side.
on the wrong side. He stood for the wrong thing. John Brown, same thing. He tried to overthrow an arms place and get weapons.
Yeah, he had the right idea,
he
right
had the-
cause, but
yeah,
wrong.
but he kind of carried it out the wrong way.
Right.
And Benedict Arnold, maybe if he had gone down and talked with all of the people in Philadelphia and explained things, they may have seen his point.
Right.
Who knows? Who
Okay.
knows? But that's what makes history history.
That's Ben.
And I was taught by a history professor, and he said, history changes as society changes.
Eye of the beholder.
Okay, so you'll see around here, all these stamps.
Mm-hmm.
They're all the exact same stamps, but in 1937, the post office did a series of stamps honoring various military people. And all of these postcards are different, but each stamp is an original first day cancellation. And you'll see that it is McDonough and Macomb.
Yep.
And so they're all different. The postcards are different, but the stamps are all the same, and they're first day covers. And I guess if you are a stamp collector, that's a very important thing.
Yes.
And the next thing we have to talk about is, with every battle, you always get little.
Just stay on my left, because
Oh.
that way. My other left.
With every battle, you always have these heroes that stand out. And the heroes that stood out from the Battle of Plattsburgh were the Aiken volunteers. There were 17 of them. They were teenagers, and they realized what was happening. They were at school, and they said, I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. But guys, you're too young. You can't do that. But if you find someone who will sponsor you, we'll let you come on board. So they found Martin Aiken. He was like 21. He was a lawyer. And he sponsored the boys. And they took down bridges. They made life miserable. They were the ones who cut trees, so they had to climb over trees. Now, the trees back then, of course, were not like the trees now. They were big trees. So it wasn't just like, okay, we'll just jump over this tree. And so this is what they did. And at the end of the war, Macomb promised them, you kids were so, I'm sure they didn't call them kids, but you were such a help to the cause that we will be giving you a rifle. Little did Macomb know that he couldn't really promise that. But he went to court again, to the Senate again and again and again, and he pleaded with him. And finally, now this has happened in 1814, by 1826 they agreed to give them each the rifle. And this is the rifle. It was designed in 1819, and it was totally unique. I suspect that in 1826, anybody getting these rifles would have been thrilled, because they were state-of-the-art, and they made it before they updated it in such a way that you could interchange parts. So if something broke, you could put something else in its place rather than either throwing the gun away or changing it around. It was something you could load it while you're standing up, apparently loading it while you're kneeling or sitting. is more dangerous. And each one of them had this plaque on it, which recognized the importance of it.
Did you realize how Aiken is spelled on that plaque?
Yep, two different ways. AK, they spell it
With a T?
I-N and E-N.
No, they spell it with a T.
Oh, well, they spell a lot of things wrong, because there wasn't standardized spelling. You're going to find that out when you go to the 75th room. And the interesting thing about this is that this rifle stayed in the family. Aiken died in 1828. He was very young.
Wow.
And it stayed all the way down. Went all the way through the family. And then John Barton, in 2017, he loaned CCHA the rifle. But he died, and he said that they had to sell the rifle because it was a family heirloom and they needed to figure it out. So he said that the rifle was too important to be left in a private collector's closet someplace. It's so important, the story is so important, it needs to be told over and over again to make sure people know the story behind the rifle and what a fantastic act of gallantry it was for these kids. And so in 2019, they sold the rifle to CCHA for a very small sum.
Token amount.
Just, and they say to honor the wishes of
Right.
the will. And over here,
And more stamps, but
more stamps, more stamps. And these are on loan to us. We put them up for the Battle of Plattsburgh. And they are on loan to us by the Stephen Allen family. Apparently, he was a collector of things, and they really wanted these to be recognized.
all right, okay.
And then we have two honorary swords that were given to General Moores and General McComb. And some of the things that are really kind of interesting is in 1812, 1814, 1816, the wording is interesting because they call it the express, in recognizing the expressive of his conduct at the Battle of Plattsburgh. And then there was the McComb one says, as an expression of the high sense entertained of his service in the Battle of Plattsburgh. Entertained has a different meaning now.
It wasn't that entertaining.
No, it wasn't. And then, let's see. This is a summation, basically, of the Battle of Plattsburgh.
So people can come in here and read this. And
Yep. And the interesting thing, too, is that McDonough was he recognized the battle and how it was. And so he just said when they would lose a battle, the soldiers had to give their scabbards and their swords to the winning team, winning side. And he said, no, return your scabbards, you're worthy of them. So they really put up a good fight. We have some, let me see, Teddy Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, they have all said the Battle of Plattsburgh was the decisive battle of the American history.
I think when they were pulling up the confiance anchor for the final time, maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whenever that we did, we're on the boat, the Juniper with Frank Pabst and so on. But somebody there did read from Winston Churchill describing the Battle of Plattsburgh.
Yep.
So he and Teddy both agreed that this was decisive.
Okay, let me see. We're still this right here. We're this boat here. We'll stay for now with Battle of Plattsburgh. This is the Eagle, and the Eagle was one of the U.S. ships, and it's a miniature size. And this is to scale. Now, the interesting thing is to compare and contrast these two boats. But this is to scale. So these has modern people on it as if they were touring the ship. And so you can see how many people could actually fit on the ship. And this is they discovered the Eagle, and it's still down at the bottom of Lake Champlain, and they made drawings of it, scale drawings, and this is totally to scale. Now, compare it with a scale model of the Philadelphia. I mean, it's like night and day. And the nice thing about the Philadelphia is that you can go to the Maritime Museum over in Vergennes, and you can get on a model of it. And when I got on that, the first time I got on that and I said, they expected to win a war with this?
This little boat.
You have got to be kidding me. And the boat, when Benedict Arnold was running this boat, they had 45 to 50 soldiers on it. Now,
Wow.
this is also to scale. These people on here are also to scale.
Yeah.
They must have been bumping into one another to have 45 or 50 people on this boat. In researching some of the people, the battle, Benedict Arnold's in the battle, was they cut down evergreen trees, and they stuck them out of the boat, so that the soldiers couldn't climb back on, so that the English couldn't board it. The Philadelphia was razed, it sunk, and it's down at it's in the Smithsonian, and you can actually see where the cannonball was that brought it down.
Yeah, it's located in 35, I think it says
Yes.
here.
Yep. Then on the bottom here is a gun carriage from the Royal Savage. Now the Royal Savage, again, had 40 to 50 people on it. Let me see. Benedict Arnold said that they were never wet with salt water because they were all farmers as his soldiers. It was raised in 1934, and this is part of the gunboat. Now then, what happened to the Royal Savage after it was brought up? It was sold in 1995 to the city of Harrisburg, because Harrisburg was going to put in an American Revolution museum. And then Harrigan gave, quote, pile of wood to the Naval History and Heritage Command in Annapolis. And in 2021, it's still a pile of wood, and it's still sitting around waiting to be preserved.
Come on, Harrisburg. Let's get off the pot. All right.
Okay, so then we come on down here, and now we get into the Battle of Valcourt. Let me see, but to our great mortification, this is what the British wrote, Carleton. But to our great mortification, we perceived at daybreak that they had found means to escape us unobserved by any of our guard boats. Now you're talking about the British Army, British Navy, the best, biggest, largest Navy in the world. We're kind of surprised by this little tiny ragtag, never done anything before.
Well, it could be they just took them for granted that
That they were done.
and somebody fell asleep.
So
Those night shift guys may have dozed off.
they weren't so great. And the interesting thing too about Benedict Arnold, he only has 2 memorials. One is the boot down in Saratoga, and this memorial here. There are actually empty buildings, empty spots where he's obviously vacant. His statue is not there where it should be. This was along Lake Champlain, along Route 9. It's been replaced, but was installed by the Daughters of the American Revolution, and it is now at the Peru boat dock.
Huh.
Oh, and something else, and I only found this by tracing genealogy. There was a Fort Arnold, West Point, before it was always known as West Point, but the fort that was being built there was called Fort Arnold. And then after he traded, then it became Fort Clinton. So we have a picture of Benedict here. Now, it was hard in this exhibit, it was very hard to keep a timeline of everything because everything is half and half.
Mm-hmm.
So this right here, I don't know if you know about this, Calvin.
I don't know.
Oh, well, this is the Civil War books.
Yeah.
We have, Clinton County had this is a listing of all of the soldiers who signed up for the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
We have people coming in all the time to look at it because they did such a good job on it. It tells what happened to them, where they went. Everything is in here. It's phenomenal. The other thing that's neat is that from Clinton County, there are 5 soldiers enlisted in Saranac, but I think a total of 7 soldiers out of Clinton County captured John Wilkes Booth. There was 26 who captured him, and 7 of those people came from Clinton County, And then there was another 3 or 4 who came from Elizabethtown, Essex County. And then a good portion came from Buffalo, and they were Germans. It was interesting to discover that. Our cannon down here, that we used to have a do not touch sign on it. This baby sat at the bottom of Lake Champlain for 200 years. But it's a swivel gun, and it was found in the bottom of Lake Champlain, and it literally swiveled so you could move it around on the boat. And when it came from Battle of, it was the French and Indian War, and it was at the Fort William Henry on Lake George. Then as the French were retreating, going back up to Montreal, British were getting too close, so they scuttled the boat, took everything of value off, and dumped it in the lake. And then in 1968, it was found, and it belongs to the state of New York, and they loan it to us because they really don't have anything to do, any place to put it.
Right. Okay.
And the interesting thing, this white thing here, the gun was loaded. The cannon, or the gun was loaded and ready to be fired. So when they brought this up, they had packed it. It was still watertight, and that is exactly what was in there when they found it. Now this, I don't know, Calvin, if you know about that. You know all about Dewey's Tavern. And Dewey's Tavern is right next to the border in Champlain. And it started out as a little house. Dave Patrick says he believes that to be the original home.
Right.
And it was along the border. But when the War of 1812 erupted, because of the border, there was skirmishes back and forth, and they would treat Americans and British as, everybody wasn't terribly, terribly bad. Their injuries and their casualties. They may have actually buried some people in the Dewey family cemetery, unmarked graves. And then in 1814, as they start coming across, they knew what was going on with the battle, and they were not in the heart of it, but they knew everything that was going on. They were a tavern, after all. There were 2 prisoner of war agreements where they traded prisoners of war, and the girl Eliza, Ella, the daughter.
Elias.
What's her name?
E-L-I-A-S.
Oh, Drusilla Dewey.
Oh, Drusilla.
She heard this. She tells about this, and she said that, and it's something I never dawned on me, but after the war, just like you said, Calvin, after the battle, when the British were going back, they dropped everything along the road. It was cannons and everything. So that was kind of something I had never really realized before. But like you said, they stayed there until the end of September.
Yeah, September 25th.
And then we have the mirror. Now the Deweys, when they never knew when something was going to happen. They could at any minute be overtaken. They might have to flee, so they always kept everything packed and ready to go. Mirrors were hard to come by in the day, so they wrapped this up in a feather bed, and they kept it in a crate. Well, the British would come in looking for spies. You're right along the border, perfect place for spies. Comes along, and they used a sword, and they pierced the feather mattress that was protecting it and broke up the corner. The family never fixed it. They just always kept it as a memento of the war and the hardships that they encountered.
Several years ago, a couple of years ago, I was here, and David Patrick insisted that I come in here, and he told me about that.
Did he tell you about the mirror?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's okay. It's worth hearing again. Now this was not part of the battle here, right?
No. This is afterwards. This was the Plattsburgh idea. The Plattsburgh idea was basically the beginning of the current ROTC that we have. Reserve Officer Training Corps that's in colleges. You go through and you come out as a You attend it through college, and they actually have a junior ROTC in high schools. And so this is what it happened here, and this was where it first started. Then other bases continued with it. Now, I do have a 1 minute. No?
Well, what is it?
It just tells you what they did.
Oh, if you want, sure. If you want to, go ahead. We'll give a.
It's only 1 minute.
All right, 1 minute. Here we go.
In 1915, at Plattsburgh Barracks along the western shore of Lake Champlain, a novel idea was developed in the preparation of men to defend their country in time of war. General Leonard Wood created a 6-week summer training camp for a select group of men.
Look how they carried
The
guitars.
general staff drilled the volunteers in every aspect of military life, from marching to marksmanship. The federal government was not too keen on the idea of educating civilians to be standby warriors, but in the light of the saber rattling then going on in Europe, the training camps were allowed to continue. When World War I did break out and America got involved, it was said that the thousands of civilian soldiers, or Plattsburghers as they were called, gave the United States a head start in men already trained to fight. Today, the Plattsburgh idea is recognized as a forerunner of the ROTC, or Reserve Officer Training Corps, found on many college campuses throughout the United States.
So that Plattsburgh idea, Teddy Roosevelt was very much for it. And
His son was in it. He came to
and
Plattsburgh.
even the then mayor of New York City was one of the attendees. So it was very well received. I'm going to switch batteries here and come right back. We are back with Jan Kuchar, and what are we looking at here?
This is a parade exhibit. Every parades are always fun
Why is there a Saranac uniform here?
because they
Miss
marched in
Saranac.
the parade.
Yeah.
They've marched in the parade.
Saranac, historian from Saranac, just happens to.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, kids, that was the bands that marched in the parade.
Okay.
And there were parades for everything, but almost every parade always started with a military presence. It almost always started with the honor guard. So we felt that this would be a good place to put that exhibit. We have this is Peru. This came from the
Okay,
hat,
all right,
that's Peru. Not all of them are school related, but we did throw in some candy because, you have to have that. Then you always had the circus parades. And the pictures that are on the wall were originally black and white, and we colorized them. And it really made them come to life.
Yeah, like we saw this one here in the upper left earlier, and it's black and white, so it really looks a lot different when you're able to
So
colorize
much.
them.
And it was one of the things that they would make of parades. It looks like they would do a parade for any reason. The one down, the second one down here is a Northern Oldsmobile Company parade of their cars. So you have the first Oldsmobile and then some other ones. The Stone Arch Bridge in Plattsburgh,
Yep.
That's dedicated in 1930. That was dedicated, I believe it was on November 11th. And the interesting thing here is this dam that is no longer around.
Okay, let me ask you a question here to get you completely off guard.
Probably can't answer it.
I saw this when I saw earlier the pictures that are available for sale. Can you get it the colorized version, or do you have to go with the black and
Oh, no,
white?
the black and white.
Yeah,
yeah.
You can't get the colorized?
No, because I took that, I used an app. Sorry. I used a colorizing art app. The one on the top was the Victory from World War I. Can you read what the sign says? Because this is November
the sign.
18th, November 11th.
Turkey went to something Fast Avenue,
Yeah, and they all went to hell.
and Germany went to hell.
Yep. What can we say? This one here.
Belfast. Okay. Turkey went to Belfast, and they all went to hell.
So I'm not exactly where Belfast, I thought, was Ireland, so I'm not really
don't know
sure what
what
that's
that's
all about. But then we end up with the carpenters and the joiners. They had union parades. Once the union movement became strong, they would have parades. And so this was one of their floats. And the bottom one, this one is so nice. Can you get it without a reflection?
The kids parade here?
This is a kids parade for opening of the Nash Superstation. And they had advertisements in all the newspapers telling people to bring your kids, and they could all parade down the street because they were going to be opening this big service station.
Wow.
And then you always had the circus. When the circus came to town,
Oh, yeah.
it was the one thing that, I mean, people lived for it. And so they put this together. And the interesting thing was, I did not do this. My husband, who is a particular person, as you can tell from looking at this, I thought these were all punch outs. No. They were all cut by hand. And he was so kind to do that. And he kept talking about how when the circus came, he grew up in Dannemora, and he said when the circus came to town, I mean, it was the greatest thing on earth. And so one day he says to me, he goes, I can even tell you the name of the circus. I said, oh, come on. And he's called it the Cells Circus. And look what this circus is from. Cells. And in Peru, or in Rouse's Point in the 1880s, the circus came to town looking at the elephants. And after the elephants, I think you can see camels behind it. And it was quite the production.
Yeah, it's a pretty good photo for an 1880s photo.
1880s. And this picture here, and I talked about this when we were upstairs in the Redford Glass. This is a glass blowers parade. Again, during this took place in New Bedford, Massachusetts, but it was probably a Labor Day parade. And this is the glassworks, and there they all are carrying their symbol of glass making, the cane.
I have to admit, I've never been to a glass blowers parade.
No, this would have been part of the Labor Day parade.
A glass blowers on parade.
On parade. Okay, now, as promised, we're back to Arto Monaco. Now, Arto Monaco's is closely associated with Land of Make-Believe and all of that, but that's all Essex County. And we only focus on Clinton County, but we could not let Arto Monaco slip away because he designed the diorama that we started this whole program with. These are all souvenirs that he made that were sold at the shop. North Pole is still open, especially at Christmas time. It's magical with the snow. He was the forerunner of many amusement parks. He was a kid at heart, and so we've had to honor him for his work.
Yeah, he was an amazing guy. He passed shortly after his 90th birthday, and in around 2000, I approached him and Sid Calci and said, I want to put together a Tom Tyler comic book, because Tom Tyler was a cowboy star in the 30s. Starred in the Three Musketeers and a whole bunch of other things, and you can find a whole lot of movies where he is getting shot because John Wayne shot him or Robert Mitchum shot him or whoever. But Tom was born in Witherby, New York, and went off to Hollywood and became a star. So Arto did the cover for us, and Sid Calci did the comic book inside, and we did. This was released shortly after the passing of Sid, and then we did another one a couple of years later with chapter 2 with other things we wanted to include. So there's another episode, but it doesn't include anything from Arto.
Mm. And on the top, that was his Land of Make-Believe castle.
And what was left of that left here in 2011 when the
last flood.
Irene came through and flooded out the remnants of Land of Make Believe. But to that point, there was hopes to preserve some of that stuff,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the floodwaters came and just took that away in 2011, Hurricane Irene.
And he was a remarkable man. He had, you can look at like the horses and the ponies. They're just so whimsical, and it's just magical.
Yeah.
And you can see why kids just could not wait to go to places created for them, just for them.
Yeah, when I was at a meeting in Maine, I went to a place, can't remember the name of it right now, but it's in Maine, and it was in New Hampshire, actually. It was in New Hampshire, and it was created by Arto Monaco for them. Down in Glens Falls, we have
Yeah.
the Great Escape
Great
area.
Escape
that
area.
started with
Yeah.
all creations from Arto Monaco. So
Did he work on Frontier Town too?
he
was
did
that-
a little bit,
little.
but not
Not a lot. And he worked a little with Disney.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And so he was really the precursor to the amusement parks,
Oh yeah. In World War II.
theme parks, I guess
In
they
World
call
War
them.
II, one of the things he did
Mm-hmm.
was make replicas of different communities in Europe that the soldiers could practice in. They would go there, and he would help, and he'd make miniatures, and he'd make a life size, and so on. So he was very, very active and creative throughout his whole life.
Yep. He had amazing stories to tell.
Yep. So Arto Monaco, just one of a kind. And I was very happy to have the chance to meet and get to know him and call him a friend in his later years. So this is this room.
That's this room.
Okay, this is our fourth chapter. We're going to put a halt to it here. Just amazing collection here. Clinton County Historical Association, and the hours are
10 to 3, Wednesdays to Saturdays.
And you call for an appointment, or if there's as Jerry says, if there's a car in the yard, stop in.
Stop in and knock on the door.
knock 3 times.
Ring the door.
and
Ring the
they might
doorbell.
They might let
Yep.
you in. Okay. I was going to wrap up this segment of the visit to the Clinton County Historical Association Museum here in beautiful downtown Plattsburgh.